I think I'm live. Hey, folks. Setting a timer here to make sure I stay on track. It's a little later on a Friday than I would normally want, but I am also free for the day. So my day ended early. I have an hour and a half or so to play this morning. My name is Phil. Hey, I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. And I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition since the release of Spelljammer's Adventures in Space in August 2022. Adventures in Space in August 2022. Yeah, that sounds really good. All right, my volume's good. I'm sitting pretty. I don't want to make it mute, but there, I want to drop down the volume. You can see here on the screen already, Spelljammer's Combat Exploration. This is the supplement that we created to provide all the stuff that was missing from the box set that Wizards put out in August. Yeah. So you can check it out. It's actually in this here. Hold on. It's in the description down below. Let me finish punching my signal out here real quick. But I've been DMing since 1987, and I think Spelljammer initially came out for 2nd edition. What, like in 1991, I think. But it's been fun as hell, man. I Spelljammer and then Planescape integrating Planejammer or Planescape into your Spelljammer campaign. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. I'm really happy to see the Astral Sea part of Spelljammer from Wizards from the 4th edition to graduate into 5th edition. This book here that we're looking at on the cover here. Hold on, let me fix my screen. Let's see. You can follow me on the X Twitter platform if you're interested. If you're still hanging out there, I'm at Phil Kearney. So I always post when I'm live there. So it's an easy way to keep track of it. But honestly, the best way is like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications. This is episode 372 of Spelljammer Art. And here's the full playlist of all. It's actually more like around 380 something episodes at this point. But we just keep building books. So you can see the initial Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book here. It's 107 pages. It's got a couple of full 5-star reviews. Thanks a lot for folks that are checking it out. But it's 107 pages. You can see all of them here. It is a deep dive into 5e combat, using all the mechanics that you already know from the Player's Handbook, a couple optional rules that are in the DMG, but otherwise everything that's in here is pretty much stuff that you already know if you've read the core rules for 5e. It just takes ships and expands them out into 50-foot and 5-foot squares. So you can see here. Let's get to a good screen for you. Here we go. We're looking at the 5-foot scale, where you expect people to be running around on the deck of a ship, which is the only way that Wizards really presented ship combat, or combat in space as it were, is get your ships next to each other and then hit each other with clubs and swords until somebody dies, and then I guess you get their ship. So yeah, 5e still works. Great for pirating, great for boarding ships, great for attacking the pilots and the crew. There's also the 50-foot scale. A hammerhead ship is 250 feet long. So at the 50-foot scale, it'd be a 5x5 space that it occupies, kind of like how a horse is like 3 feet wide and like 8 feet long, but yet it occupies a 10x10 space. 2x2 at the 5-foot scale, same thing. At the 500-foot scale, though, as you can see here, this warbird is very, very small compared to the hammerhead ship. But at the 500-foot scale, they both occupy 500-foot squares, although both ships could easily occupy the same 500-foot square while you're engaging in combat at the 500-foot scale. While they're in separate spaces, they would occupy separate squares, kind of like how two pixies in a dungeon could be next to each other in separate squares, but they could also occupy the same square of space. And you can see that represented down here. So like here's a 10x10 space at the 500-foot scale, which gives you a 1-mile battle station. You can see here a fleet of star moths engage in a fleet of hammerhead ships, and these are 500-foot squares, right? But when you zoom in, you can see there's actually lots of ships. That this icon here can represent multiple ships. So you're seeing here 3 star moths and 4 warbirds that all can fit inside this square. Alongside here, we see 2 hammerhead ships in a single square. So you see that these two are closing distance with each other here on the larger map. So then we scale in on a separate 10x20, like you could just have a pizza box that you just keep these figurines on as a separate scale. Like you can move between scales from 5 feet to 50 foot to 500 foot in 10 by 10 blocks as necessary to depict the type of battle that you're in. So you can see here that these two ships are closing battle. So you see the adjacency line here between the two 10 by 10 spaces. So these are 50 foot squares. That's a 200 foot Star Moth occupying a 4 by 4 space versus the Hammerhead ship here occupying a 5 by 5 space, 250 feet. But it's still within the same 500 foot square. And so you can see here, there's a warbird that's closing distance to then land on the deck of this Hammerhead ship. And I don't need to show the entire Hammerhead ship to have this battle happen. It's only happening inside these 2, maybe 3 squares, 10 by 10 squares. Again, you can just pick up and drop these down onto a separate map so that you can keep your different scales separated, moving everything. Like you exist on all 3 of these scales at the same time. It's just a matter of what are your characters doing, what's important. Are they engaging at the fleet scale, at individual ship dogfighting scale, or on the deck of each other's ships, cutting each other with swords and clubs? So fleet mechanics are in here. It's extensive. 107 pages of basically 5e mechanics for maneuvering, combat, and exploration in space, including things like finding small objects in distant locations. It has spell casting and amplified spell size and ranges. Wild space system generators, so you can make up your own. Some solid rules on how to calculate or how to depict planets moving around a central star and moons and asteroids and stuff moving around a planet. So it makes it easy for you to be able to homebrew your own wild space system and how to be able to map it easily so it's fun and not a problem. So you can just don't have to think about it. It's very easy to do. Lots of really fun illustrations in here. Check out the book. If you think it's cool, consider picking it up. There's a 25% discount coupon right here if you click on that. So, but yeah, all the stuff that I publish has extensive free previews. That book has 120 different map and token assets that makes it easy for you to run all the. Oh yeah, and there's even just show off one last second to get done with the self-promotion aspect of this. But if you pop open the full preview, if you like Light of Xeraxis, we have an entire conversion guide for the entire adventure in the back end of the book, for you to be able to use all the mechanics that we built inside of this book to change how your characters can interact with the creatures, monsters, the characters, monsters, and ships and challenges throughout Light of Xeraxis. We added in specific combat challenges like the Neogi ambushing you at the Lucent Edict. We have a fleet battle between the Night Spider and Spiderling fighter craft versus your squadron of Galleon patrol ships throughout a dungeon maze, an asteroid field that looks like a dungeon maze. There is the battle. There's the Omama hunt at Topola's Tower, where you're jumping on board fighter craft and chasing and fighting the space scavvers that are harassing her tower and her Mollywhawks. Mollywhawks, thank you. There's a change in the battle for the Grave Alliance. The mutiny leads to a space battle that makes it logical for you to pick up Princess Adali. Spoiler alerts. System maps for the different systems and wild space. What we're currently doing, what we've been doing, was designing Vokath's fortress to be a 500-foot battle crab so that it can fight the different ships. Here's the ships that are visiting Vokath, among yours included. And then here's the star moths that surround and harass Vokath's base, looking for NPCs that the team has information about. But instead of them just stepping up and being jerks about it, what we're doing is we're designing a battle over Vokath, which is here. Anyone that's familiar with my channel has seen this already a lot, but I'm going to peel it open again because it's going to be useful here for a few minutes. There we go, Vokath. So we're taking Vokath's base and we're turning it into a 500-foot mecha that can unfurl and attack the elves as they threaten his home, which is something you don't want to do to Merkane in general. It puts them on his shit list for reals. So here's how his base looks. It's depicted in the in the Light of Xeraxis adventure. So you can see the base frame of this that we've again rebuilt into These are all 50-foot squares, so this is a 500-foot battle crab. 500 feet is the largest size that a single spell jamming helm can pilot alone. Otherwise, if it's bigger, you're going to have to start having a series helm where you're interlinking multiple pilots to coordinate and concentrate their activities on assisting each other, which is difficult to maintain long term. So this is, I see a little imperfection over here. I'm going to have to fix that. Yeah, I have to fix that. But that's okay. Just keep an eyes on it. Interior maps, ship, base reference. I want to grab this, duplicate this layer, and bring it over to Battle over Vokath. So I can close up Vokath's crab for now. Have this as a reference. Up top, REF. There. So this is the cover that we did for the Spelljammer Combat Exploration. I'm going to keep this framework here. We're going to change the title down here to a Battle over Vokath, so we'll get to that eventually. I'm just going to leave this here for now like that, but we're just going to drop this out of view. I'll need to make use of this for Star Moth references because we will have Star Moths. So there's 2 book covers that we're working on right now. One is Battle over Vokath. The other one is Spelljammer, Warforged, and Machines, which is the book that we've been designing here at lunchtime on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But instead of doing design work today, we're just doing artwork because it's fun. So this is BOV, Battle over Vokath. So I'm just going to, we have the trade dressing here. I'm going to lock the dressing layer. I'm going to change this to trash. Actually, I'm going to just toss it up into the reference file. There. I'll eventually get rid of it. But for now, I'm going to just grab up this color because Vokath is the name of one of the moons in Doomspace. And purple, greenage. Looks like it becomes more and more green as you go further towards the moon. So I think I want to keep that general idea here and then push it up here. So we'll see how this shakes out. But we're just kind of doing some ideation right now. Just to throw things together, see how it sits, build a composition. Since we know what our framework looks like, our page dressing, since we already have that established here, it could potentially be fairly easy for us to be able to set this up. I'm going to do this here. Right now we're just doing some color splash, nothing too important. So I'm just gonna blend for a little bit and let my mind start wandering. So I've got a 20-minute timer set here. I've got basically an hour and a half for me to futz around here. So we're doing Battle over Vokath right now, and then we're going to do Warforged and Machines. Warforged and Machines is a book that converts the fightercraft mechanics that I have in the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book into war golems and colossi from Eberron, Last War. The House Cannith is like the artificer guild in Eberron, and they were building artificial people, which are warforged, and they advanced that tech into war titans, war golems, and things that are hundreds of feet tall, which are colossi. And the spelljamming helms can pilot a ship up to 500 feet in size, but instead of making them all animal, fish, insect, bird shaped, instead we can make them humanoid shaped. And then we have rules for supersizing weapons that basically follows the rules of Monster Manual and Dungeon Master's Guide, which basically allows you to be in a tank to give you more hit points with massive weapons that allow you to do more damage so that lower level characters can take on higher CR creatures. And we'll eventually, after we get done with these 2 books, we'll have an opportunity to build out kaiju using the same scaling combat mechanics that we use for like the megapede and giant dragons and stuff like that. That's already in the Spelljammer Combat Exploration supplement that we have in the Creatures Menagerie. But we're just going to formalize and lean into mythic actions, legendary actions, and stuff, and to make these Titan creatures more impressive, while still staying inside of the general motif of what is Spelljammer. So that we have we already have a mechanical system to be able to engage in combat at the 50 and 500 foot scale, and we already know that we can scale in and out between 550 and 5 feet during the course of one round of battle, depending on how we want the camera to play with the action that's on screen. So that allows us to have battles where characters on foot or on a horse can be running up the back of a 2-mile dragon while attacking it with a fleet of Gundams, like 400-foot Gundam attacking it. Like, that could be a legendary battle for like 16th level characters pretty easily. Like, that's the kind of scale of combat that we're talking about. And I haven't seen anybody... maybe it exists out there and I just haven't seen it yet. So, I mean, that's on me if it exists. But as far as I can... I've done a lot of searching, and there's not really much out there talking about changing scale to change the scope of play. And I lean into scaling all the time. It's one of the broader mechanics that I think helps make my work unique in how I can reframe different scenarios and adventures and combat scenarios to be able to create new types of a challenge, and to allow characters to step away from this having to tolerate monologues from the bad guy because you're not supposed to attack him yet, and instead start looking at how can you reframe your adventures so the players are threats right from the get-go, and there's reason why they're on evil, antagonists' radars, because they're brazen. Players are always brazen and overly bold and cocky, and if you couple that with resources and power, they're going to cause mischief for other plans. So that's how you can reframe. If you give characters enough power, you can reframe almost any adventure that Wizards has published in the past 10 years to take away the feeling of helplessness and being on a roller coaster ride where you're just kind of passively absorbing plot points, and instead you can make critical choices that really screw with what the antagonists in the adventure are trying to achieve. So you earn their hate, and it helps reframe the campaign so that you can see why things escalate over time as your characters progress and things get further and further unhinged and into that wushu epic style of play. You're going to be able to earn your way into it by reframing how your campaign runs using some or all of these tools if you want. So that's the kind of stuff that I offer, and if it's a value to people, then they'll pick it up and they'll use it, and thank you for that. I'm glad to add value to your games. So if you think this stuff sounds like it's cool, stick around, because this is what we're doing for the next probably year and a half, just building stuff like this to flesh out Spelljammer to the point where I can set it down and say, I've done enough, and I can graduate and go build my own games. So, like I said, I've been a DM playing D&D since 1987. Most of these, like Planescape and Spelljammer, Dragonlance, Dark Sun, these are all hard-coded as epic stuff in my mind. Just being a kid, getting access to this stuff, it's awesome. So the DMsGuild is a place that allows me to actually slap Spelljammer on the title to some of my stuff, and I'll for the most part, like the mass combat system that I've been developing, it's like that's so good for the Dragonlance board game. Like, replace the Dragonlance board game with the 5e mass combat system I have. It works great. There's a lot of really fun, like the warforged machines can be a way to reframe Storm King's Thunder so that you are running around in giant-sized war titans fighting dragons and giants at the different hex crawl locations, so you can flip and really change the script on how that whole campaign can run. You see what I'm saying? So if you think that stuff's cool, stick around. Love to have you. That's my first timer. It's on a 20-minute block, so every 20 minutes we're going to hear that pop. Now we got about 90 minutes left. Right now I'm just putting in a splash of just some color. I'm just throwing paint on the board. Mostly so that when I start putting the ship assets in, I'll have a good idea what kind of colors, what kind of like contrast, light and dark, how much value is going to be in the piece to support their presence. So I'll know, like, do I want to use white or black fonts for the color? You know, like when I'm doing the sketching, do I want to use white or black ink? Like just that basic decision really helps start to frame how the different ships and stuff are going to be depicted here in the scenario. So we have the fleet mechanics already in the Spelljammer Combat Exploration book. This is just another example of how to use them to create new narratives and new stories inside of the Light of Xeraxis adventure. Light of Xeraxis itself, it's an okay adventure, but it has so many great points of engagement that a DM can build out and homebrew off of. There's often complaints about how much work has to go into running a campaign. But having a story, like that's something that got invented with Dragonlance. Like there's all the dungeons that are out there, there's always, you know, antagonists with plans and things that they are attempting to achieve. But when in the old days, back in the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons days, the old Beck Me boxes, there wasn't so much a story to tell. It's just that there was events happening, and how your characters interacted with those events. That's called emergent story. And there was no plot. There's a conspiracy, or maybe a plot to destroy the world, but there's very little in the way of scripted scenes and soliloquies. And like, don't fight this thing. It's too tough for your team to take on. Just hope that they don't attack the dragon at second level just because it happens to be there. Of course they're going to attack the dragon. It's there. It's what, again, that brazenness. It's what players do. So you have to be able to build. You need to be able to have means for your characters to interact with the things that you want to be in the adventure, without them necessarily getting themselves killed immediately in the process. Like if you're going to drop a dragon into the adventure, you either need to be telegraphing that this thing is way too dangerous for you to take on, so it's your fault if you get killed, and be able to wipe your hands of it, or provide tools that allow them to actually engage the threats in the adventure and be able to actually do some damage to it without immediately being killed. Because you put it there, it's kind of your responsibility to figure out how can it work in your game. And Wizards doesn't really offer very good advice on that most of the time in the adventures that they have. They just kind of let you, well, a lot like Strixhaven is the worst offender here. It's like at the end of every fight, it's like, yeah, if your characters get killed, have a powerful NPC mage show up and save them from themselves. Like that's so. It's I don't think a lot of the writing that's happening. And I'm going to punch up here for a second, so forgive me. But there's not a lot of personal accountability in the stories that are being created, and there's not a lot of culture being built into 5e around the phrase "fuck around and find out." Like first edition, Beck Me, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, all those older editions were very, very much steeped in the art of fucking around and finding out. A lot of times in manifesting as party kills, or save or die, or like getting one shot, or falling off a ledge and just getting splatted. it was expected for you to have horrible deaths, and it was funny, but it also made you a really savvy dungeon explorer. Like, you have to lose many characters to start thinking about how can I use this 10-foot pole to prevent me from having to roll up another character in the next 10 minutes. And that's kind of a lost art of critical survival that the first, second, fourth, like the first and second generation of D&D enthusiasts just kind of had to learn to keep their character on the board. And that's kind of been watered down. I won't even say kind of. That's definitely been watered down. So it's a different style. There's a much stronger focus on the character's personality and their individual goals that may exist, regardless of what the adventure is that's going on around them. Most players walk in with a story and a background that may not have anything to do with actually going on in the adventure. It's because they thought that'd be a cool character. And that can lead to a lot of cognitive dissonance and lack of buy-in. If your character doesn't have a background yet, other than, what their background random dice, like you could have a random ideal and a random flaw and a random characteristic that you can start considering for your character. But if your character dies in the first episode, then why are you wasting your time falling in love with this person if they're just going to get splatted, right? The old school style of thinking is don't have a background, just show up and survive. And you surviving long enough to gain levels is ultimately going to become your background story. That becomes your origin story. But you could also, I've talked about this before, every time your character gains a level, you can give a meta reward of allowing them to add a paragraph of backstory to their character relevant to the events of the adventure that have already happened, so that the character becomes more thoroughly grounded into the game that they're actually playing, instead of burdening the DM with, hey, how can you work my adopted kid's real parents into the story? It's like, no, I'm rendering an entire world. If you want to have an adoption story, that's kind of on you. And because like in the old Beckme days, you wouldn't even care about that. It's like, who's your character? I don't know. He's a dungeon delver. Let's see just throw some dice. Let's see if he lives. Oh, he didn't die. 3 characters later, I'm still waiting for a character to stick. And then you eventually, like after 10 characters, you have a character that might get to 5th level, and then that guy dies. It's like, well, crap, now I gotta build another character and get them ramping up, and it could be another 6 characters before you get to level 9 and even have the right to start buying property and becoming a lord in the game world. But you'll have earned it because your character leveled over time, and that's why so many, like, if you get into conversations with people that are in different editions, you're going to notice a different type of nostalgia. The newer gamers, like since Wizards of the Coast took over, the nostalgia behind, let's talk about D&D, tell me about your games, they're going to mostly talk about their character, what their character is capable of doing. That's what 3rd edition was all about. Building a unique character that utilizes resources and magical items and spells and class level combinations and feats to build a unique character capable of performing different physical feats, or being able to like have a reliable action loop during combat, or being really good at researching, or whatever mechanical system that's inside of the game. You can build a character to exploit that subsystem game, to be the best at doing that game. Like if you want to build a researcher, you're going to want a lore master, for example. They're the absolute best at being able to research virtually any spell you can think of. I want one of those on a roster, so I'm going to build that kind of a character and really lean into the scribe idea. Here's a scribe build. You can research and successfully create virtually any spell and brew any potion you can think of. Here's how to do it. But then 4th edition scrapped the deck building components of D20 games, and instead went the MMORPG route, where you'd have a skill tree with specific options that you can pick between as you gain levels, and it was very stifling. It didn't allow us to continue to build in that deck building feel, like that Magic the Gathering deck building game sort of ideal. No small irony that the company that created Magic the Gathering, that when they took over Dungeons and Dragons, immediately turned it into a deck building game by allowing you to select from a huge list of feats, skills, magic items, and multi-classing options to build exactly the kind of character that you want, capable of producing the exact type of results that you want consistently, which is what deck building in Magic the Gathering is all about. What's a mechanic in the game that you can build a deck that exploits for you to defeat your enemies? And 3rd edition D&D was very much in that same sort of thought process, and it was awesome. Revolutionized the game. 4th edition scrapped it out to lean into the MMORPG craze that World of Warcraft had become, and that was a flop. So when they eventually came out with 5th edition, they found a sort of a spot between 2nd edition and 3rd edition and called it 5th. It has a little bit of 4E mechanics kind of squeezed in there, but I would say narratively, like the feeling of 5E is somewhere between 2 and 3E. So the change in culture, it went from the very, very old school, tell me about your character. They would tell you about their accomplishments and the magic items that they found. Because the only difference between one 5th level character, like a 5th level fighter, one from another, is what magic gear does that character, does one have versus the other. So when you found a sweet piece of magic item or an artifact or something like that became your character's identity, because there was no other real way to differentiate one character from another. And so the idea there was Monty Hall gathering equipment, defining your character through the things that they've won and accomplished. 3E came along and it redefined tell me about your character to be what's your build, what's your deck build like, what does this character do, how did you get there, what are some of the cool mechanical exploits that you've uncovered and synergized together to create your unique character. Oh, by the way, does it have a name? And then 4th edition, all that fell away, and there were no options, so there was no real inspiration other than what's your character's background story, because that was the only real choice you had over the creation process. Like, you got magic items for free, so you automatically got the magic item that you wanted, but there wasn't a lot of mechanical complexity in 4E. It was very structured in a very intended for computers sort of way, which there's a lot of channels that have talked about the failed virtual tabletop effort in 2009 to be like a real a revolutionary virtual tabletop environment. Like 2008, 2009, like there wasn't much going on. I think Roll20 came out like in 2012, 2011, something like that. Is that right? Maybe it was 2010. God, I've been on it for 13 years. Yeah, so 2011. So Wizards would have been first in the market, but that whole story is crazy. So it all kind of fell apart on them, and 4E was kind of counting on that virtual tabletop interaction. And it didn't happen, so 4E kind of fell apart. It had so much possibility, and it just wasn't executed properly. So then 5E comes around, and now it's just because of where Western culture is at right now. It's far more about tell me about who your character is, what's their identity, and that's all most newer players pre-bake all of this background story and personality and stuff without it necessarily being even relevant at all. So now, even though there are more character building options, which still has a contingent of builders that enjoy 5e, but it's not as complex as 3e, so it's not quite as satisfying as 3e was. So now there's a blend of technocrats and thespians that want nothing but backstory for the characters. So 5e is this weird middle space where there's hardcore mechanic builders that want to optimize 5e because it can be optimized, and then the more thespian LARP types that don't really care about throwing dice around or combat. They just want to be able to speak in character and use accents and dress up and cosplay and table LARP. I call it table LARPing. When you're at a role-playing game at a kitchen table, but you're more interested in the in the interaction of characters, the live action aspect of the social pillar of adventure over exploration or combat. So you could just sit around and drink beers together at the table and have it be in character, which has an appeal. But again, the complication is that your DM is now being asked to integrate all of this arbitrary character backstory that may not have anything to do with what's expected for what's planned for the actual adventure. So there needs to be, which is why I think the quote unquote session 0 trend has risen so much in 5e, because you have to really understand where in the field is your team sitting. Like, are they explorers? Are they combatants, or are they are they conversationalists? How are they going to approach the game? And you want to make sure you understand what their default assumption is about approaching the game is, so you can align how you present your game to match with how they want to play it, which could lead you to going through a number of different players until the DM is capable of building a team that's going to align with the style of game that you want to run. So you have to keep your DM on board if there's going to be any game at all. So even though it's often portrayed about being all about the players, it's really DM first. The DM has to be happy with what they're going to be preparing and narrating for the rest of the team to keep that narrative going week after week after week, or to survive 2 or 3 weeks off if schedules break down. These are all really important ideas that need to be properly calibrated, and you have to be aware of them in the first place to be able to do anything with them. So that's my PSA. Cheers. Cheers to all y'all. So I'm feeling this is pretty well blended right now. I'm just gonna kind of soften up some of this swirl. Vocath it had a different name, but once the star collapsed in the center of the system, and the crystal sphere that was containing Doom Space shattered, that's when it gained the name Doom Space, I guess. And so Vocath, the Mercane, moved into the area to start selling survival supplies to whomever it was that survived the cataclysms on the different worlds, and they all got moved to different moons. And so Vocath just decided to adopt one of the moons and rename it Vocath after himself. So it gives you an idea of the kind of megalomania we're dealing with here. But the Star Elves don't respect what the Mercane are. So they're just hunting for people that they need and that have gone missing. So they're not very respectful of Vocath's station as a Mercane, as well as his sense of safety, which is being trifled with by the fleet showing up to attempt forcing answers from the party. That's just going to piss Vocath off. So that's why this fleet battle occurs. Vocath would rather risk a war with the Xeraxians than to have them show up and abuse his home. The Mercanes have more resources and capabilities than virtually any other culture in Wild Space. If they needed to, they could rival the Blood War. That's how deep their pockets go and how widespread their influence is across the Wild Space spheres. So making them angry is a really dumb idea, but Xeraxians are kind of backwater. They have their little backwater kingdom where their royalty is important to them, and that's about it until they start destroying worlds in sacrifice to their sun god. And that's just too far. That's how your players get involved in this. And Vocasman, the Mercane are tolerant of it because ultimately it's just going to lead to more weapon sales as that thing escalates. But once the Zeraxians go over the line and threaten Vocath directly, that's when he starts unleashing the beast, as it were, and feeds the players and the allies that they're forming a faction with at Vocath's facility. That's kind of how all this kicks off. So I'm trying to retain this cloud feel, but also have like a real sense of endlessness to it, as well as like a sense of depth, that like you're trapped inside of this loose atmosphere that's hanging around the moon, and it gets poisonous moving further into the moon. Out at the edge of it in orbit, it's fairly safe. No. That's feeling pretty good. Let's just do that. That's probably good enough for now. So we can just leave that like that. Maybe we drop the opacity a bit so that it blends into the dark background a little bit more. That's a decent spot. That's a decent starting spot. So we're going to sky. Lock that down for now, and let's peel open. Man, I just got hit with a heat wave. It just suddenly got really hot here in Seattle. I don't know what's up with that. Normally I won't need to use my air conditioning until July-ish. I'm starting to feel the heat. It was so cold last night I could actually use my fireplace. It was wonderful. Okay, so where are we at? Let's well, I can hear myself, so I gotta do something about that. There. Let's see. Let's just go with black lines for now.
There's an energy beam that shoots out from it. It's like a mega laser. Deals D12 times 100 hit points of damage. It is dangerous. How can I? So far, so good. It's looking pretty good. Let's do like that. There we go. We're just doing some ideation over here, just building ideas. See if we can come up with a cool composition that we'd be willing to pour 40 hours into building. Because that's about what it takes for me 40 to 60 hours is typically what it takes for me to build a book cover. Nice. That's feeling pretty good. Calf. Perspective. I don't know if this is going to pan out or not. Nah, this isn't jiving. Let's see. I need to keep the center on the ships because that's what it's about. Trash. Let's do our rule of thirds. Rule of thirds says to break up your space into 3 equal parts. So it's going to be roughly there. Your points of interest are here, 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 and here. It's just basic. This is just basic theory. So Vokath, currently, I had him sitting like around here. So what's our point of actual interest? What if I were to... Let's go with Zarix here. Let's drop this to black. That's about as big as a Star Moth is. That's not true. If this is the length of it. This is about the size of a Star Moth. Let's go find it. There's a gas crab, and here are the star moths next to it. Well, that's convenient. Look, a star moth sits exactly inside the space of the arena. It also lines up here at the edge of the from the arena to the back of the private tower. I have these available for reference also. My eye burns. In Ope. So that's about as big as the Star Moth is alongside Vokath. that's about how big it would be in comparison. Let's drop vocab down a little bit. Huh, can I? So it's too static. It's way, way too static. It needs to have some pitch and yaw to it, you know? That seems to be the optimal way to make it look interesting. Take that and separate it. Let's just keep focusing on things just getting smashed out by this. Composition here is going to be a really big selling point. My thing is that it has to be angled like that. Let's take this out. It's not bad. Dead. Axis, then allies. Strike ship. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. So far, so good. Got Vocast Laser destroying a couple of ships that I lined up. Having some enemy ships, having some allies in the area. More incoming ships from afar. This will probably be okay. It's not the greatest composition yet, but we're just getting started. Let's It's not bad. Okay, so yeah, we're sitting pretty. We got the laser sitting about here. We've got a ships being destroyed here. That's not too far off mark from where we want to be. So we can pull that down. Just want to very subtly reduce this, make it a little more V shape so that it pushes out. Dead. That's not bad framing at all. That's not bad. All right, I got 20 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one on hold here. I'm happy with how this is coming along. So we're going to drop you out of view. We're going to come over here. We're going to go to warforged and machines. Warforged and machines. File. Let's go back. Duplicate that layer. There. I see it's a little off. That'll look good. This is probably not where we're at yet. This is probably a
better idea for the kaiju book. I was thinking I want to put that on hold then. Let's try something else. Maybe something like this. Something like that. Let's get rid of these ores for now. Let's keep the form simple.
Okay, this is very much an Analithid. Yeah, let's put the center mass there.
Let's see. That's the way I want this to be depicted. That's feeling pretty good. We're getting there. We're just gonna have to fuck around a while and find out. All right. Looks like that's all we have the time for today. We're just doing some doodling here. We'll figure it out. Let's end that. Take this over here. Yeah, we're going to come back and mess around with this some more. We just get to draw some mech. That's what we're going to do. Some fantasy mech. It's a book full of fantasy mech. So that's all I have the time for today. I'm going to be doing some play testing for the martial power system tomorrow morning. I'll be back Monday morning to continue working on Karen the Enchantress for the Eberron adventure. And then I think, yeah, that feels right. And then I'll have, let's see, I have D&D. I don't know what my Monday's looking like right now. But I know Monday through Friday next week, we're going to be doing Eberron. We'll finish up Karen. And then we'll start in on the little vignette battle maps in the Carnwood and in the Manifest Zone for Mabar. I think we're going to have... I may or may not be around on Monday. I don't know yet. It's my birthday this month. So I think Monday, we'll either be celebrating on Sunday or Monday, which means I'll be offline in the evening. I'm not sure how it's going to shake out yet. But we'll be around. And then Tuesday, Wednesday lunch. And then Friday lunch. And then Thursday morning and night, Monday through Friday in the morning, Thursday night for sure. Yeah, we'll see where we end up. So thanks a lot for hanging out, guys. I will see y'all on the other side. Have a great night, and I will catch up with you soon. Thanks a lot.